This video will help you with multiplying polynomials. The first thing we're going to look at is the distributive property. We know that when we are simplifying a problem like this, that if there is a number in front of the parenthesis, that we take this number and we distribute it by multiplying. So we would have 6x minus 16. Well, we're going to do the same thing with a problem like this, except for now we're going to have variables inside the parenthesis and outside the parenthesis, and we have to remember our rules for exponents when multiplying. So in this problem right here, we're going to take this 5x and we're going to multiply it to the 2x cubed. So we know from the first section in this chapter that when you're multiplying that you add the exponent. So we'd have 5 times 2, those are the coefficients, that's 10, and then we would add the 1 and the 3 to get 4. Now this work I do not require you to show. You can just do it in your head. 5 times 2 is 10, and then add the exponents. And then we would have 5x times 6, which is 30x. And then we can't add those together because we don't have like terms, so that would be our answer. So when we're using the distributive property, we have to remember that we add the exponents. So if we look at example 2 here, we're going to take negative 3x squared y to the 4th and multiply it to the first term. So again, I'm going to write it out for those who are visual, but you don't need to write what I'm writing here. So we would essentially have negative 3 times 5, which is negative 15, and then we would add the exponents. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and then 4 plus this one is 5. Now we're going to multiply this term and this term. So we would have negative 3 times 6 is negative 18, and then we would add 2 plus 1 is 3, and then we just have y to the 4th. Alright, now we're going to multiply to our last term here, so these two here, and we would have negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6, and then we have 2 x's here, but none over here, so we have x squared, and we have 4 y to the 4th here, no other y's to add to that. So this would be our final answer. We can't add or subtract any of those because they're not like terms. Okay, so now we're going to look at multiplying two polynomials together. So over here we just had a monomial, one thing on the outside, and we were multiplying it to a polynomial here with more than one term. But now we're going to have in this problem, we have a binomial times a binomial. So we know that it means multiply because that's what it means when you have two parentheses touching like that. It means multiplication. And so we're going to multiply each term of the first binomial, so each one of these to each one of the second binomial. And then we'll combine like terms. And again, remember when we're multiplying, we add the exponents. Now, if we have a binomial times a binomial, this could also be called foiling. But it only works if you have a binomial times a binomial like this one. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with this x here, and we're going to multiply it to this x. So x times x, we're going to add the exponents. We would get x to the second power. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to cross this out for a second. Now I'm going to multiply the x to the negative 2. So I'm going to do x times negative 2. So we're going to multiply the coefficients. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then we have an x. Okay, so we just multiply this x by both of these. So now I'm done with this. Now I'm going to take this positive 3 and multiply it to both of those. So I have positive 3 times x. So we have 3 times 1 because they don't have, this 3 doesn't have a variable next to it. So 3 times 1 is 3, and then we have the x. And then lastly, we have 3 times the negative 2, which is negative 6. So again, this you don't have to show me. That's only for those who it may help. And now we're going to combine like terms. So now we have negative 2x plus 3x. So I'm going to figure out what negative 2 plus 3 is, which is 1x. So I don't need to put a 1 there. It's implied. So you can get rid of that. So I have x squared plus x minus 6 is my final answer. So keep in mind here, we did not add, when we combined these two here, we did not add their exponents and put a 2 there. And the reason why we didn't do that is because when we're adding and subtracting, we don't add the exponents. We only add the exponents when we're multiplying. That's why we have a 2 here. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one here. So we're going to take this 3x and multiply it to the 2x squared. And then we're going to multiply the 3x to the negative 4x. And then we're going to multiply the 3x to the 5. So we would have 3 times 2 is 6. And then we would add the exponents. And then we have 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And then we add the exponents. And then we'd have 3 times 5. And then we just have this x. Okay, so now I'm completely done distributing and multiplying this 3x. Now I need to multiply the 6. So I have 6 times 2x squared. And then I have 6 times negative 4x. And then we have 6 times 5. So 6 times 2 is positive 12, and then we have the x squared. And then we have 6 times negative 4 is negative 24x, because we have the x here. And then 6 times 5 is positive 30. Alright, now we're going to combine the like terms. We have a negative 12x squared and a positive 12x squared. Those are going to cancel and make 0x squared. And we have a 6x cubed, no other x cubed, so that's going to go first because it has the higher exponent. And then we're going to combine a positive 15x with a negative 24x. That's going to make negative 9x. And then lastly, we have this 30 right here, so we're going to bring it down. And that is our final answer. Alrighty, the next type of problem we're going to have is we're going to square a binomial. So, for example, if we take a look at number 5 here. Now, we have had an exponent outside of parentheses at the beginning of this chapter. If we take a look at this example right here, what we did when we were simplifying this is we did 5 to the second power, which is 25, and then we multiplied the exponents when there's exponents inside and then outside, and we got 25x to the sixth power. So remember why that is because it's saying that there's two 5x cubes. So the job of the exponent here, this 2 out here, is to tell us how many times, so this 2 that was out here, tells us that there's going to be 2 of these. Well, that's the same thing with this. The job of this 2 is to tell us that there's 2 3x minus 7s. And then we need to FOIL that. We need to multiply that. Over here, we were able to just distribute the exponent of a 2 because there was just a monomial one thing inside. This has 2. So you are not allowed to just distribute this exponent of a 2. You have to write it out twice like this. So you cannot distribute the exponent because the terms are being added or subtracted in this case here. So you're only allowed to, if the problem looks something like this, distribute this exponent to everything. But if it has a minus or a plus, you cannot. You have to write it out twice and multiply everything. Okay, so we're going to start with this 3x, and we're going to multiply it to both of these. Again, it's optional if you write this part out here. You can do it in your head. So we'd have 3x times 3x, 3 times 3 is 9, and then we add the exponents when we multiply. And then 3 times negative 7, and then the x. Okay, now we're going to do multiply the negative 7. So we have negative 7 times 3x, and then we have negative 7 times negative 7. So negative 7 times 3 is negative 21, and then we have the x, and then negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. So now we combine our like terms, and negative 21 and negative 21 combine together to make negative 42x. And then we have our final answer. So as you could see, you would get the incorrect answer if you did this. 3x squared is 9x squared, and negative 7 squared is 49. So if you distribute this 2, you don't get this answer here. So you cannot do that. All right, let's check out this problem here. So we cannot do this because it has this minus sign here. So instead, we're going to write it out twice. And go ahead and feel free to pause the video and FOIL it yourself and then check with mine. So I'm going to take the x squared and multiply it to the x squared, and then the x squared times the negative 3. So we would have x to the 4th minus 3x squared. And then we would have negative 3 times x squared and negative 3 times negative 3. Then we would combine our like terms. And we would have our answer.